Hello and welcome everyone to the final episode of 2021, the year that Donald Trump was banned from Twitter. I completely forgot that that was a thing that happened, but yeah, that was one thing that happened this year. Arable farmers experienced the first kind autumn they've had in a few years, and dairy farmers with cheese contracts have continued to see good prospects in the markets. On the downside, avian flu is biting its hardest in the UK for quite a time, and the pig industry has had more than just its fair share of challenges this year. This evening, though, we'll surely explore all of this and more for this year's Meet the Farmers Big Farming Quiz of the Year. But who, I ask you, or I hear you ask rather, is joining us on the panel to pick apart the year and hopefully get some questions right along the way. Well, as last year, we're joined by Guy Smith and Emily Norton on our first team. Guy farms in Essex and is chair of Red Tractor Cereals and Sugar Beet, and was, of course, formerly deputy president of the NFU. Emily is head of rural research at Savills. She also sits on the National Policy Committee of the CLA and is a director of the Oxford Farming Conference. On the other side of the room, we have two Wyn-Jones. Gareth, first of all. Gareth is a sheep and beef farmer from the Carnetho Mountain region of North Wales, as well as an all-round TV and radio superstar. And we're also joined by Shaw, who has been called in very, very last minute. And massive thanks, Shaw, for coming in and getting involved. So you're going to be team number 2. Welcome, everyone, to the show. Right, so some rules for the quiz. You'll all write your answers down individually, and then we'll combine Guy's and Emily's and Gareth's and Shaw's. But to be honest, Shaw and Gareth, if you want to confer, in fact, let's go with that. If you want to confer and do one answer for both, as long as Emily and Guy, you're fine with that.
Fine, as long as we can cheat in the background and Guy and I can confer as well. That's absolutely no problem.
Cool, we'll run with that. As we know, this is a very serious quiz.
Most father and sons don't speak anyway, so I'm sure.
It could be a domestic on the round.
As we know from last year, Gareth is actually the reigning champion from 2020 when he won with Johan. So it's all yours to lose this year, Gareth. But let's start with our now traditional roundup of the year. Guy, let's go over to you first of all. How will you remember 2021?
It's a bit like 2020, isn't it? Because of you know what, and we run this cafe outside Clacton-on-Sea, and this time last year we were thinking, should we be shutting early in the interests of the staff mainly, and we're back in the same place. So obviously with the world of vaccines sort of changing, tweaking the dial or not. In terms of farming, I suppose it's glass half empty, glass half full, isn't it? And in different harvests, buoyed by some spectacular prices, dampened by huge increases in inputs. So you can take your choice, but I'm generally for an arable farmer. If the wheat price is north of 200, then what could possibly go wrong?
Absolutely. Gareth, what about for you?
It's been a good year, I think. Livestock prices have been up. There's been a few challenges. Fert is up now, and the cost of fuel. But I think there's been a lot more respect for the agricultural industry within the general public. I think that's really important. I think we're reconnecting as well with people, and that's really, really heartwarming.
Yeah.
For me, anyway, I feel more positive going into next year. Of course, it's been difficult with everything that's gone on, especially for tourism. We did do a few of our immersive tours at the end of the year, and 2022 is looking really busy if everything comes off. So I'm crossing every single thing I've got up here to go forward. And me and the wife as well had a fantastic opportunity to go down to the annual London Ball with the Game and Conservation Trust, and that was just amazing. Just to go in there and speak with like-minded people, with such a positive outlook of how we can go forward. And to get invited to these places is really important for us all to, connect and come together. If it's a lord or a lady or somebody that's, gamekeepers and people that are just working the land, we need to get everybody reconnect to go forward so we can, bridge that gap with town and country again.
Fantastic. Emily, finally, your roundup in 2021?
Yeah, my roundup, I think within the kind of the work that we were doing, big focus on COP26. So a huge kind of build up to November and sort of anticipating, expecting loads of exciting things to be coming out the back end of that conference. Whether it did or it didn't, I don't know. But I think those drivers around land and around way people are thinking about the sector, that's not going to go away. So I really think it's been quite a crystallizing year from that perspective. What we do and don't know yet around environmental land management schemes and all that kind of thing versus really where these big picture things are going. So that's been really quite interesting in terms of how that's really crystallized in this last year. But the highlights to me, it was so good to get to Cereals. It was so lovely to see everybody. And it was kind of the first event that felt sort of normal, although obviously the social side was a bit muted. And then sort of coming into September and sort of things getting back to normal, and Farmers Weekly Awards. The Farmers Weekly Awards felt so normal. It was lovely and really, really good fun to get everybody together. And then since then, we're just kind of sliding towards Oxford, being slightly scared about what's now going to happen. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Farmers Weekly Awards because there may be a question or two about those later. Talking of the quiz, let's go to the first round. So this is about 2021. Have you got your pencils at the ready? And we will, by the way, we'll just do mark yourselves at the end like last year. Like I say, this is a very, very serious quiz. Question 1. On February the 19th this year, which country officially rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement 107 days after leaving? Okay. On February the 19th this year, which country officially rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement 107 days after leaving? Question 2. The Eurovision Song Contest was held in which city this year? And for a bonus point, which country won? Question about Eurovision there. Lots of thinking going on. Question 3. Matt Hancock resigned as health secretary in June of this year after being caught doing something in his office. But what was it?
We'll have to put that.
Yeah, you can put as much detail as you want, Gareth. Question 4. A ship blocked the Suez Canal for days, causing worldwide delays this year. But what was the name of the vessel? I think that's a tricky one. We've got to have some hard ones.
Ben, did you see that there was an app where you could reposition that ship to scale on your farm, for example? You could put it anywhere, so you could see quite how big it is by like repositioning it across fields. That was fun.
If there is, I want to know the name of the app.
My fields would have been too small anyway.
I've got one final question in this round. The Zoom meeting of a UK council went viral this year, with one guest memorably exclaiming, "You do not have the authority, Jackie Weaver." What council was it?
Oh.
It's amazing, all this stuff, isn't it? You sort of just, it's so big at the time, and then it goes.
Do we get kind of points for getting the right kind of county or kind of like region or kind of like quarter?
I think we'll be lenient there. Yeah. Unless someone has the exact council name, then that person will get it.
Yeah, no idea. Yeah.
Let's have a chat about farming this year. Guy's already said he's already talked about cost of inputs, which has been a big one. And that's impacted everyone. And I suppose let's focus in on that. Guy, thinking on a general level, I mean, what impact has that had on a farm level?
I think that the fertilizer thing is quite intriguing, really, because across the world, if less fertilizer is going to be put on, and I think that's likely if prices stay similar to where they are, then we're going to have a reduced harvest, and reduced harvests mean higher prices. But the irony is that if you do the equation, you should put less fertilizer on if it becomes more expensive, unless the grain price goes up, where you should put more on. So you have to second guess the price of grain, given that farmers are likely to use less. So you could do sort of a spiral here that you get lost in. But I do think it sort of, Emily mentioned COP. You know, what one sort of knee-jerk thing for farmers to do to reduce their carbon footprint is to use less fertilizer. And without doubt, that would do. It's probably the one thing you could do to have most impact. But what we must remember here is that you've got food production at stake. You know, 8 billion people on the earth needing to eat, and it's reckoned that without fertilizer, you could only feed half of them. So I think it nicely puts into the spotlight that if we overcook the reaction to carbon in terms of reducing food production, then the consequences of that could be quite severe. And you know, these food prices now will be putting pressure on a lot of governments. And if they go up even more, you know, you can trace the Arab Spring in 2008 back to what happened to bread prices that year. So you know, less food about, it's got political significance. So I think it raises a lot of questions. Really interesting.
Yeah, I think to be honest, that is one of the key points that's come out of this year for me, as we've been talking about on quite a few different podcasts over the last few weeks, is culminating in this point where the carbon versus food debate is really at the forefront. And this is the perfect time to turn to Emily on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't feed everybody on lamb, can you?
Yeah, you can.
It's a fundamental dilemma as to how we think about this stuff, and I think, you know, we got you know, the national food strategy and these kind of this better understanding of these linkages between what we eat and how we produce it and how the land is used. And things that probably within farming we've known for an awful long time, which is that people eat rubbish and it makes them sick and it costs us a lot of money to fix it. And then post-coronavirus, I think maybe those linkages are a bit more pointed now to say, look, do you know what, if you don't look after yourself, if your health isn't good, you do end up costing the NHS more. And it's not the same kind of acceptance of these things being as they are. But I still am really curious to find out whether carbon and net zero really is the fundamental kind of like baseline on everything that we do, or whether these other arguments around food security, around health, around well-being, around community, around the history of our landscapes will balance those arguments. And I don't think we have a clear answer there yet. If money is allowed to speak to carbon, and then money will win, and those carbon outcomes will be dominant. But if policy respects more of the history and the nuance of places and the cultures that are there, then we should get better land management outcomes. But it's really unclear at the moment in my mind which way it's going to go.
Yeah. What about in Wales, Gareth? What's the how's the food environment debate going on your side in terms of
It's been quite scary with a few things that we've seen recently. Farms being bought to offset carbon, to plant trees, and you know, we're talking about British Airways, we're talking about some big German companies coming in, and you know, these are farms that are worth millions, and they're offsetting it and taking it away from, you know, families that could make a living off that. And that's quite a scary thing, because once you start losing these farms, you know, you'll start losing food production within them areas. And, you know, so these big companies can carry on flying all over the world and spilling out carbon just because they're planting some trees in Wales. And I think it's wrong, and Welsh government has been supportive of that at a certain time. I think, you know, people have started to wake up and smell the coffee, and that's really important, because to go forward, I think, yeah, we need to address how we're producing food in some areas, but we have to get the balance right as well, and that's really important.
Yeah.
I think, once you start planting trees, I've got nothing against trees, girls and boys, but I'll tell you something, you can't eat them, and we have to remember that. We really have to remember that, because I think trees in certain areas are fine, and a lot of people, haven't really understood that these trees aren't sucking up for carbon till the latter stages of their life. And this is a big thing that we really need to push out as farmers. We've been working with Bangor University. They're doing some great work here on the uplands, and they know, the way these sheep are grazing up here on the Carnedda, there's more carbon stored on these mountains than it is in any forest in the UK. These are the lands that we need to be watched after. These are the mosaics of different habitats that need to be managed properly by the people that are working the land, and that's the farmers that understand it, and we know how to do it. And do we pay extra for these things? These are the things that we have to look at going forward. We need food, but we need it in a way that's environmentally friendly and sustainable, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll carry on that debate after, but let's have another quiz round. So round 2 is the listeners round. So there's a load of questions here who come from various farming listeners. Question 6. This has come from Aled Evans. What is the average grass yield on British beef and sheep farms during 2021? Got to know a bit about grass. It's quite technical.
Like tons per acre, or 100 weight per hectare?
What, that's in tons of dry matter per hectare. It's a good one.
Just bob here, you talking common, so
it's just the
Oh, the Wyn-Jones are conferring. Question 7.
He's had 4 years in Harper's, remember?
Yeah, you should be bang on that.
no.
Question 7. This is from Stuart Roberts. The new star of British farming in 2021 is without doubt Caleb Cooper. When his boss, Jeremy, bought him a new tractor in the first series of Clarkson's farm, he chose a Lamborghini Trattori R8 270 DCR. Can you remember what horsepower this tractor is? And the nearest to that will get the point. Question 8. What was the name of the now famous alpaca that brought TB to the forefront this year? That's from Abby Reader.
I did an interview on Jeremy Vine about that, and I can't remember.
Oh,
Remember Jeremy, not the alpaca. Oh.
It's one of those that,
I remember now.
you'll kick yourself when you hear the answer. Question 9. I remember we had a similar question to this in Wales last year, but which country has more sheep, Australia or New Zealand? And that is from David Butler.
That's definitely a trick question, isn't it?
It is a trick question, yeah. Which country has more sheep, Australia or New Zealand? Question 10 from Matt Naylor. How old will Lord Henry Plum be on his next birthday? And again, the nearest will get the point there. Question 11 from James Robinson. And of course, it being James, it would be a hedgerow question. UK hedgerows have been a valuable part of our countryside for hundreds of years and are important in many ways, including being a valuable habitat for countless species. But how many kilometres of managed hedgerow do we have in the UK? And again, the nearest will get the point there. And the final one in this round, question 12, is from Tom Jones. According to their website, Guy, you've got to get this one. According to their website, no pressure, how many farming and growing businesses does the National Farmers Union represent? to the nearest 1,000.
How many? Sorry, what?
According to their website, how many farming and growing businesses does the National Farmers Union represent to the nearest 1,000?
Whoa.
It's got a lot less since I left. That's a rumour anyway.
To be fair, the actual answer that I have here is a lot less than the figure that I originally had. So maybe it has.
Depends whether you include.
There we go.
Countryside members.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about COP, which dominated the headlines later in the year. And I think we've also had a record number of electric vehicles being sold this year, and more farmers thinking about measuring carbon, reducing their climate impact. Emily, let's turn to you on this first of all. I mean, what do you think have been the lessons learned this year from a climate environment point of view?
I think the lesson not learned is about self-responsibility. I think within farming, we are being encouraged to see pound signs when we talk about carbon and other people's carbon problems, as Gareth has already been alluded to. And I think what we aren't seeing enough of yet is an understanding that we also need to be a net zero industry. And once we are a net zero industry, then we might have carbon to sell and to help other people achieve their ambitions. I still don't see that narrative coming out of the sector. And it worries me because I think a lot of people are sort of looking at these opportunities to sell their carbon or sell the management of their carbon to third parties, and not enough are understanding what it really is going to mean for them to transition to being a truly sustainable business. And I think that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of investment together.
I'm going to turn to both our farmers on this. Actually, I'm just really interested to see whether it's sort of on your practical radar at the moment, and whether what you're doing. Gareth, first.
We've been storing carbon since we've been here 375 years. I tell you, you know.
Where do you get that one?
This area is a massive carbon store. I think we can all do a little bit more. You know, we're not big fertilizer users. We don't use pesticides. You know, what we farm, majority comes out of the ground, which is grass. We don't plow a lot. You know, it's pretty sustainable what we do. But I've been around a lot, and I met a lot of people over the times. But this year it's been different. I haven't been meeting people as much. But some of the great stories, you know, I've heard, like Grosvenor Farms has produced the first carbon zero milk.
Yeah.
These are the things that, you know, again, he says, these are the positive stories that we have to drive for. Because at the end of the day, we're producing something that we need to sell forward to people. Bangor University doing some great work as well on cattle and sheep in the uplands. And a lot of this work will come out. I just hope it does get the media coverage it deserves. I think we forget that a lot of the work we're doing is good for the environment. You know, when the grass is growing, it's drawing the carbon down. Cows are eating it. We've got to pass that on as well somehow. I think a lot of the numbers we've been given and portrayed as showing are misleading, and I'd even say that they're false. And we need better data to go forward to make sure that people understand what exactly we're doing as an industry.
What about your business, Guy?
I think the adage is, isn't it, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we lack on an on-farm basis. And I think it comes down to probably being able to measure organic matter in your soils and then laying down base data and then trying to improve that reading. But I don't think there's enough clarity as to how you actually do that. And you know, someone was telling me that the true organic matter reading is below a foot. Well, that's not where we're soil sampling from at the moment. So I think we need some clarity on how farmers can lay down a clear understanding of what the organic matter levels are in their soils, and then how they can measure whether they're going up or down, and then they can judge themselves which practices are working best. But it's just sort of, it slightly worries me that these fundamentals still aren't in place. So we haven't really started the journey.
Right, we are on to round number 3. Back to the quiz.
Got it.
And this is the podcast round. Question 13. You might remember this one from last year, and there's a point for each. So there's 3 points up for grabs with this question. Name 3 guests from the Meet the Farmers podcast from this year, in 2021. Question 14. Which Suffolk-based arable farmer featured recently on this podcast won the Farm Manager of the Year category at this year's Farmers Weekly Awards, as well as the overall Farmer of the Year award?
Are we allowed the same answer twice? I've just written him down for the first one.
Yeah, you can do that.
All right, smug points, yeah.
Yeah, that works. Question 15. Who presents the Over the Farm Gate podcast? And if you know what organization makes that podcast, then it might make it easier to guess who presents it. I'm not doing any more than that. Question 16. Even the DEFRA Future Farming and Countryside team have their own podcast now. But what is it called?
Below the fences are wrong answers only. Yeah.
And question 17. Back in July, which strategy did I discuss on the Meet the Farmers podcast with Stuart Roberts and Sue Pritchard? Back in July, which strategy did I discuss on this show with Stuart Roberts and Sue Pritchard? Okay, so let's turn to policy now. We live in uncertain times, that's for sure. But what do you think we've learned this year in terms of the policy direction we're heading for across the UK nations? And actually, I'm going to turn to Guy on this one first, because you love a bit of policy.
Yeah, well, the stuff that's been announced recently, it looks more interesting in as much that it looks quite accessible and easy to administer. But what is interesting is if any of these schemes sort of slightly put the dampers on production when prices are really high, then I think farmers are going to be loath to go in, especially at the initial stages.
Yep. So
it would suggest to me that they're going to sort of falter, I think, early on. But if wheat goes back to £180 a tonne, then farmers will look at it again. But at the moment, I think there's a big sort of green light out there saying produce, because where commodity prices are, and that won't help. But as we know that these strong prices could disappear, and then so I suppose it depends on how short-term farmers are thinking. But I normally think farmers do think quite short-term.
Would you go along with that largely, Emily?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, we've really still too focused on the environmental land management scheme and waiting for those details. I keep banging on about the fact that what we're losing in the basic payment scheme is not just income into the sector which delivers certain outcomes, it's also risk management. And that money coming in every year would basically guarantee next year's crop. So if you'd had a terrible harvest and a wet winter, things just hadn't gone your way, you knew you would get that money in next year and it would be okay. And in 5, 6, 7 years' time, we're not going to have that anymore. There might be money coming into the sector which needs to be spent on the environment, but we haven't got effectively harvest risk management in place. And so I'm really interested to see how that becomes a thing that we need to think about at business level over the next 5 years. Our supply chain is going to pick up more of that. Are we going to collaborate more at farm level? Are we going to think about better crop storage solutions or crop risk insurance type solutions? But in my mind, some of that background policy, we're still too focused on the detail of what the sustainable farming scheme may or may not be, and not enough around the fundamental changing picture around business risk that's going on here.
Okay. What direction do you think you'll be going in Wales, Gareth? What are you being told now?
We've been told a lot of things. I've been quite fortunate. I had one of the policy makers and people up here for a day with me, which was really interesting to show what we've been doing up here, you know, with some of the schemes that we've been working on since 2006. And he was very interested in a lot of the work that was going on up here. And I think these are the interesting things that sometimes we're not sharing enough. And we have to get that out into, you know, the general public, because, you know, if we're going to be subsidized to produce food, I think people need to know that, you know, we're here to produce food at an affordable level, and that's what the subsidy stands for. Unless we can get that message out for people, you know, we can say, you know, environmentally friendly, sustainable, seasonal, local, but it has to be affordable to these people as well. You know, we have to remember that feeding this nation is not going to be easy to do it sustainable and environmentally friendly, and we're going to have some, you know, quite intensive units to do it. It's great to get the niches, but we have to get that balance. And I'm finding that sometimes quite hard to put over, because you've got some people within the realms of government that are just pushing for environment, you know, which is fine, but we need to be producing food as well. And how can we get that balance and make it affordable? I think that's going to be the difficult part. I'd like to see more locally produced foods. As somebody that grows a lot of his own food, I've seen that I'm able to, you know, I've been having tomatoes in November here with no help, only from a polytunnel, of course, and not growing them outside in the mountains. But, you know, I was able to do it in November. My growing season's bigger. So why not? Can we get a few, you know, bigger producers within this country instead of importing everywhere, every kind of food? We need to be looking at these, you know, smaller hubs where we can feed ourselves better. And I don't think we'd be as dependent then, you know, on global trade. If we could do it in this country, maybe it would be more affordable and seasonal, and our carbon footprint would come down.
Yeah, let's turn to that point, because this time last year, the B word, we were talking about Brexit quite a bit still then, and we have had some rather high-profile trade deals since then, and the direction of trade policy is let's say people have had some quite strong opinions on that. And Emily, let's turn to you on this. Do you think? Can you just give some straight feedback on Gareth's points first of all, actually?
Well, I was just going to say that the Norfolk equivalent of Gareth's polytunnel is happening, and that is 10-hectare greenhouses being constructed around here in order to supply tomatoes. And the investment that's going into that kind of infrastructure on what you'd think to be conventional farmland, obviously Dyson's you know, done there, been there and done that, but it's happening, and I think there is this shift to localization, but really from a sustainability perspective. So guaranteeing that it's got a lower water impact, it's got a lower carbon impact, and it's come from a source that you can go and see and touch, and you know that it's there. And I think those things are increasingly important.
Let's do another round. This is the final round of the quiz, and this is general knowledge. Question 18. What is the name of the government's latest woodland expansion scheme for farmers in England? This question is from Luke Hemmings. And for a bonus point, which organisation administers it? What is the name of the government's latest woodland expansion scheme for farmers in England? And for a bonus point, which organisation administers it?
I'm really annoyed that I don't know the answer to this.
Luke said he'd be surprised if anyone knew it. Question 19. Emma Raducanu, who has just been announced as the BBC Sports Personality of the Year, won the US Open women's singles title with victory over which player in the final at Flushing Meadows? Tennis question. Question 20. Wales were crowned Guinness Six Nations champions in 2021, but were denied the Grand Slam due to a close 32-30 defeat to which team? And I'm sure Gareth will take his memory back to this day. And the final question, question 21. In January 2021, hundreds of farmers dug out their trainers and joined Run 1000, raising over £52,000 for rural mental health charities. But can you remember which nation accumulated the most miles throughout the month? Was it England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, or the rest of the world team? And that question comes from Rich Heedy. Run 1000 listeners is going ahead again in January. Please do look that up and get involved. I know that Rich from the England team would be massively appreciate that. Grand. So that's it for the quiz. How are you all feeling? How does it compare to last year?
I don't think I'm going to win this year.
I found that last round really hard. It's like I kind of know all of those things, but you're asking the hard version of those questions. It's like, anyway.
I was hoping anyway. We'll be lenient. Right. Okay. So let's go through the answers. So the maximum score, I think, is 25, including bonus points. But let's go through these. On February the 19th this year, which country officially rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement 107 days after leaving? Emily.
Yeah, so I thought this was a trick question because I knew it was the US, but I was thinking every 107 days after they left, I thought that they'd have been out for longer. And then it was like some kind of trick Brexit question where we had to do some sort of technical rejoining thing. Anyway, I went for the US.
Yeah, it is the US. And that was thrown in as that was a little technicality, but it was the US. The Eurovision Song Contest was held in which city this year? And for a bonus point, which country won? Anyone know the city?
I was going to say you got a 1 in 27 chance of getting it right, but we know that that's not true about the Eurovision Song Contest. It could literally be any country in the planet.
Yeah,
it wasn't Australia. I don't think it was Israel.
Yeah.
I was going to get Latvia, but I don't know.
Okay, the city was Rotterdam.
Okay.
I went Copenhagen.
Oh. The country that won was Italy.
Oh,
but again,
missed that one.
Yeah.
Totally passed me by.
Question 3. Matt Hancock resigned as health secretary in June after being caught doing something in his office. What was it, Gareth Wyn-Jones?
Well, I put something quite respectful. I put hugging and kissing, swear not sure,
Yeah, definite points.
I put testing personal protection equipment.
Oh. Question 4. The ship that blocked the Suez Canal for days, causing worldwide delays. Anyone know the name?
Evergreen.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to give you that because because it was technically I think it's called Evergiven, but it is Evergreen on the Evergreen's on the ship itself. So have Evergreen, but Evergiven is the name. And the parish council. Can anyone remember the name of the parish council?
Is it Horden or?
Oh, it's so close.
I thought it was somewhere in Cheshire. Was it somewhere in Cheshire?
It
was Handforth.
That's definitely in Cheshire. Yeah.
Which is in Cheshire, isn't it? Yeah.
I said somewhere in Cheshire, so I'm going to give myself half.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. We're in the next round, the listeners round. The average grass yield on British beef and sheep farms during 2021 was 7 to 9 tons. Which is quite a sort of broad figure. But who should we do? Who got? Yeah. So what did everyone say?
10.
10 for Guy.
John got 7.4.
Oh, bang on.
Don't believe you. I went 3, but I don't know a lot about grass. So
I would have thought.
Emily, he's been a harders for bloody 4 years. It's cost me a fortune. If he wouldn't have got that right, I would have kicked his hard one out.
Yeah, literally. Deducting it from his salary from here on, Gareth.
Sure gets the points.
Those ice-capped Welsh mountains must bring the average down.
It'd be 1.1.
The Clarkson question. What horsepower is Clarkson's tractor? The answer is 269. So who depends who got closest to that?
You're joking.
Yeah.
220, I said.
220. Anyone got
158, I said.
I went high. I went 450, but again, I messaged Guy to say, I seriously, I just remember him saying it was a really big tractor.
That's not a tractor. That's a spacecraft.
Guy gets the points. The name of the alpaca, and Gareth's going to kick himself if he doesn't get this.
Oh, I got this.
Geronimo,
well done.
Geronimo.
Yeah, Geronimo.
I remembered it last minute.
Brilliant. Which country has more sheep? This is the David Butler's question. So the answer for this is Australia, but it is a bit of a trick question because there's five sheep for every person, but only 40 million sheep in Australia. So in Australia, there are 110 million sheep, but there are 40 million in New Zealand. Matt's question: how old will Lord Henry Plum be on his next birthday? He will be 97 on the 27th of March 2022. Wow. Who got closest there? Gareth, what did you say?
I know that one. Born in 1926, isn't he? So
yeah, it must be something like that.
I put 90 down.
No, it's okay. Gareth put 92. What did you put, Emily?
I put 94.
94.
It'll be one hell of a 100th birthday party.
It will be, won't it?
Lovely guy. Absolutely amazing.
The hedgerows question. What did everyone say for this one? This is the nearest one.
20 million miles.
20 million miles.
I know it's the same distance as between the Earth and the Moon and back again. But I don't know.
I put 360,000 kilometers.
Not bad. Yeah. Well, the figure that James gave me was 402,000.
Oh, okay. I think
bad.
the target isn't the target 500,000. I think that's where Natural England want to get the target to for hedgerow creation. Yeah.
Okay. The NFU question. What's on their website at the moment? The nearest 1,000. How many farming and growing businesses do they represent, Guy?
Well, there are, I think it's 14,000 full farmer and grower members.
Okay. So this is what, because I was literally just going on what was on the website, and it says they represent 46,000. But I don't know how do they come up with that figure? Oh.
I wrote 46. I wrote 46.
Bang on. Emily's bang on.
Well done.
But Guy has just confessed to some creative accountancy on behalf of the NFU. So where the balance comes from, nobody knows.
No comment is all I can say.
You have to delete that bit.
Question 13. Name 3 guests from the Meet the Farmers podcast this year.
Well, this is like a name drop in farming. You know, who's not been on there, Ben?
It's getting more difficult.
Joe Stanley. Was he this year, Joe Stanley?
Joe, that's a good shout. I think he was the year before. I think he was just the year before. Let's have a look.
I thought he was on your East of England one, Ben.
Oh, good shout. No, that is very true. So yeah, he was.
Are there regional versions of this? I did.
Very good. Yeah.
Stuart Roberts.
Yep, you can have him.
Ed Vipond.
Yeah.
Bang on.
Yeah. I had him too. And you had Martin Lyons as well.
Yeah, you could have Martin Lyons.
Sue Pritchard.
You could have Sue Pritchard. Yep. That's all good. Super. Who's next? The Suffolk arable farmer. He's already been said. Ed Vipond.
Yep.
The Over the Farm Gate podcast. This is the Farmer's Guardian podcast. So that's presented by editor Ben Briggs and head of news and business Olivia Midgley. That would be good podcast knowledge if you got that one.
Well, I guessed it was the FG one, but I went Abby Kay.
Okay.
I went,
wrong. I went Adam Henson. I was going to even put George Monbier down as a joke, but I thought better hadn't, just in case I get murderized for doing that.
Under the farm gate.
The DEFRA podcast. That is called.
Don't ever flipping ring again.
I was going to say a problem.
I went WTF question mark.
That is it's called the Future Farming Podcast.
Oh, jazzy.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go over and listen to that. Back in July, which strategy did I discuss with Sue Pritchard and Stuart Roberts? That was the National Food Strategy.
Got that one.
Yeah, and it sounds like you all do pretty well, actually.
Tricky ones.
Yeah, there were. I was quite mean with these questions. The general knowledge round. Luke's question on woodland. It's called the England Woodland Creation Offer, and it's administered by the Forestry Commission. So if you wrote either of those things, you get a point.
No.
I have an amazing girl in my team who writes notes on these things. She's sort of one of our chief policy people, and she's written a note on it, and I should have read it, and I should know the answer to that. And I feel really guilty that I didn't.
There we are, Luke. It has been said, and hopefully it's now in everyone's minds.
Yeah, UK. Yeah, got it.
The Emma Raducanu question. She played Leila Fernandez.
Literally nobody remembers the same second.
No.
It was a fantastic match.
It was.
Wales lost 32-30 to Gareth.
Ireland.
France.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
France. And Rich's question on Run 1000.
France, we lost to.
Last year, the nation that accumulated the most miles throughout the month. Does anyone know?
I reckon it was Scotland. I think Sheena Horner did an epic job getting the Scots up there, but that was my guess.
They did a good job. But
It's because their Strava doesn't
I went
work.
for England.
well, it was actually Wales.
Oh.
Yeah, Wales won last year. So we'll see what happens this year. So that's it. So what are the scores? What did everyone get? Gareth? Let's add them up. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's a maximum of 25.
Oh, there's not a 25 here anyway.
7.
Emily.
Oh no, I could add another 2 there. Maybe 9.
Okay, 9.
Oh, and I got Ed Vipon. 10. Sorry.
Oh, it's going up.
Just keep going. 10. Stick at 10.
10 to Emily.
11.
Oh, 11 for
Oh,
Gareth.
he said that. I should have said last.
I'm
Whatever Gareth
honest,
said.
you know me,
And
I'm
let me
honest.
guess, Guy got 12.
Yes. And the Trump campaign scored more than anyone else. I actually got 10.
10. Oh my goodness. So actually, Gareth triumphs again. That's 2 years on the trot.
John and Gareth.
I did have a little bit of help though, didn't I? Fair play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but don't you add mine and Emily's scores together?
Well, that's in the usual. Yeah, the original plan was going to be so.
Yeah.
Based on that,
Okay.
So I
Emily
got
and Guy
hammered, really,
win.
didn't I?
It's hard on you, Gareth, but hey, you know.
I am a Welsh hill fan and I'm used to be trodden on, don't worry.
I think to be fair,
you wouldn't want any
let's
favours
give
from
it-
us softy southerners.
Let's give it to Mr. Wyn-Jones again this year. That is it for today. And a huge thank you to my guests, Guy Smith, Emily Norton, and Gareth Wyn-Jones, and of course, Shaw as well. Thank you also for listening. That is it for the podcast this year. And thank you so much for listening this year. Please do give the podcast a review wherever you listen. It honestly really helps with getting the word out about and getting more people involved in the show. It has been brilliant, honestly, to see so many new listeners this year. It's grown quite a bit this year, which is great. And I hope that we'll still have more join us in 2022. Thank you also to all the guests who've come on this year. Without you, honestly, there wouldn't be a podcast. So massive thanks to you. I'll be back in a few weeks' time to review the Oxford conferences in traditional style early in the new year, although fingers crossed at the moment for OFC. I know RFC is already not happening face-to-face, but still fingers crossed with OFC. And until then, let's just say have a very, very happy Christmas, and let's all hope for a good year in 2022. Thanks, guys.
Well done,
I'll see you
Ben.
next time.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Well done. Nadolig Cowan from Wales from us all.
I didn't think I was going to win it. I really didn't. I thought, well, as I said, like the competitors were a lot bigger, but then the night was amazing. Like, I mean, it was this massive. It wasn't. I didn't realize the event was as big as it actually was, but it was just. I'm already nostalgic about it. Like, it was like amazing. Like, it really. That was one of the most amazing achievements I think I've ever had.